Good evening, this is Eswatini TV News Bulletin at 8. We're coming to you live from the capital of the Kingdom of Eswatini, Mbabane. My name is Notile Sitole. First up, here's a look at tonight's headlines. The Minister for Health says the country is expecting 500,000 more doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines. Members of Parliament have moved a motion that the Ministry of Education reverses the decision to compel parents to pay last year's school fees. A heavy storm that swept in some parts of the Northern Wall region on Sunday afternoon left a trail of destruction. And now the news in detail. The Minister of Health, Nkosi, says the country will receive 500,000 more doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. Speaking when delivering a ministerial statement in the House of Assembly, the minister said more details on the arrival of the 500,000 doses will be given in due course.
The country received 20,000 doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine on the 11th of March 2021 from the government of India. Meanwhile, on March 13, the country received 12,000 AstraZeneca vaccines. Eswatini Minister of Health Nkosi elaborate on some of the vaccines yet to be received by the country.
Additionally, we're also going to receive 500,000 doses of the Oxford University AstraZeneca vaccine as a donation from Oxford University AstraZeneca for the country. The next delivery expected date will be communicated closer to the date. On bilateral negotiation, Mr. Speaker, the country is trying to source 100,000 doses of the Russian Sputnik V through the Gamaleya Institute. Mr. Speaker, the African Union has secured a provision of 270 million doses. Mr. Speaker, the country continues to engage other bilateral consultations with manufacturers of COVID-19 vaccines with the aim of sourcing additional vaccine doses through direct procurement to cover all the eligible population above the age of 18. With the available funds, including the budgeted amount of 200 million Malanian set aside for procurement of COVID-19 vaccines. The country has additional money. We have $15.8 million from the Cash Foundation and $1.5 million from the government of Taiwan for the procurement and the rollout of these vaccines. The American government, through USAID, has recently committed $2 million to support the vaccination rollout through partners.
Minister Nkosi says 2,250 health workers have registered for vaccine, while 52 have been vaccinated. The minister added that 1,870 members of the public have registered for vaccination. She says the exercise commenced on Monday, and health workers will be vaccinated from Wednesday to Friday. She says the vaccination of health workers will continue next Monday in parallel with the vaccination of all people, which will be followed by those with comorbidities and essential workers. For Eswatini TV News, Fortune Dlangamandla with Bawethu Sithole, Parliament.
The House of Assembly has moved and debated a motion which seeks the Minister for Education and Training, Lady Howard, to halt with immediate effect the payment of the 2020 outstanding school fees and thereafter reimburse parents and guardians the money they had already paid. The motion was moved by Mathanjeni North Member of Parliament, Phila Buthelezi.
The motion of urgent public importance by Mathanjeni North Member of Parliament Phila Buthelezi is in relation to the payment of school fees for classes that did not sit for external examination in the academic year 2020. Buthelezi is seconded by Shiselweni 2 Member of Parliament Strido Mpanza.
Laba khona ukushayela ukubayela Mr Speaker basesikoleni laba ngakhona namuhla abantu abakaregister ngokuthi bethe imali yalasiye ipola salary. Mr Speaker, ngibonile nje ngesstatement lesifishwe kwitolo ebusuku lesithi how ngoba teacher wasebenzisa ukukhulumisa ngezikoleni nama-budget namna. Mr Speaker, sikhuluma ngama-millions. Legislativo bahlali bemaswati laba hliphahliphe COVID abaphepholo abaphepho teacher bawuthika ngale mali. Mr. Speaker, on average bantu laba affected ngalesi modesi
sithi imali ledliwa kunenamuntu esikoleni yalingana naledliwa kunomuntu ikhishela umuntu ingane leyo mali leyo.
The Minister of Education and Training, Lady Howard, requested the members of Parliament to extend the implementation period from 24 hours to 48 hours as she needed to consult with the relevant stakeholders.
Ngicela ukuthi lo 24 hours indlu imali engibonelele ingeke 48 hours ngizophuma ngiyoconsulta people community ngithindane nabo REO ngizokhona kuletha i-response yebhalana lokho. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
At the time of compiling this report, the House of Assembly was still debating the motion and the Minister's request has not been adopted. For Eswatini TV News, Fortune Dlangamandla with Bawethu Sithole, Parliament.
The time has come to fill the vacant positions of constituency councillors or Buchopo at Eswatini, Mbolonjeni and Sithathaweni chiefdoms. In a statement issued by the chairperson of the Elections and Boundaries Commission, Prince Mhlaplangeni Dlamini, the EBC wishes to notify the nation that on the 27th of March 2021, by-elections will be held in the following areas. At Kubuta constituency, at Eswatini chiefdom, voting will take place at Eguphakameni High School. At Mbolonjeni constituency, at Mbolonjeni chiefdom, there are 3 polling stations being Emncitini, Edladleni NCP, Siphosa Primary School and St. Augustine Primary School. At Sigongolweni constituency, at Sithathaweni chiefdom, voting will take place at Sithathaweni Primary School. The EPC also wishes to inform the nation that in all the polling stations, voting will commence at 7 o'clock in the morning and polling stations will close at 7 in the evening, and shortly after, the counting of votes will be underway. The public is urged to attend in their numbers and bring with them their voter registration cards or national IDs. The EBC wishes to emphasize that members of the public should adhere to the COVID-19 regulations at the polling stations that include wearing a face mask properly, observing social distancing of 2 meters and washing of hands with running water and soap or using hand sanitizers. Moving on with the bulletin. A heavy storm that swept across the Northern Ho region on Sunday left a trail of destruction to property and crops. The storm left houses for a lot of families without roofs and damaged maize fields. The Baphalali Eswatini Red Cross Society conducted an assessment of the damage, where they distributed tents and food for those who were severely hit at Mvembili.
On Sunday afternoon, a heavy thunderstorm accompanied by rains hit some places in the Northern Ho region, including at Mvembili, where it left a trail of destruction to property and crops. The storm left a number of houses without roofs and damaged maize fields. On Monday, Baphalali Eswatini Red Cross Society conducted an assessment of the damage. Speaking to Eswatini TV News, Celani Malaza explained that they visited a number of homesteads at Mvembili where they distributed tents and food to 4 families that were severely hit by the storm and needed urgent help. Malaza says they visited 24 homesteads that have 139 family members.
Sibeseke nakulamanye sashiya nemathende emathapolini lang7 emakhaya. Lokunye lesikubonile ikakhulukati la eMvembili ngula emasimini awu abantu benkosi bebalimile kodwa ngendlela sekwendeke ngayo nyalo sekufana ngizokasebalimi ngalo ukuthi kulalise phasi kungenzisile kanombila sangaqini kahle.
Mvembili constituency councillor Mzwandile Nyamane says the community has been dealt a major blow, as not only they have been left without roofs, but they have also been left without food. He says the setback caused by the storm comes at a time when the country is battling COVID-19, and he appealed for assistance on behalf of the community, in particular those who were affected by the storm.
Sibona nalesifo nje nasikhona sekuvela naloku manje asathi ukuthi sitawubheka phi siyacela nje usimane basizayo laba abazama ngabo manje usitobuyabuyela esimeni ngosiyami.
Bapalali Eswatini Red Cross Society managed to visit several homesteads, but due to the extent of the damage caused by the storm, they were not able to visit all the homesteads. Hence, they will proceed with their exercise of assessing the damage on Tuesday. Reporting for Eswatini TV News is Pumapim Swedi Mvembili.
The Shiseleni Regional Health Team on Monday had a workshop with community leaders, including chiefs and community headmen, following the arrival of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. Sibusiso Lokotwago, who is the Regional Environmental Health Officer, says the workshop is for sensitizing the community leaders about the vaccine ahead of its arrival in the region.
Chiefs from all the different chiefdoms under the Shiseleni region on Monday had a workshop moderated by the Ministry of Health COVID-19 response team in the Shiseleni region. The Regional Environmental Health Officer Sibusiso Lokotwago says chiefs have the ultimate authority in communities, therefore using them as primary disseminators of vaccine-related information in the communities will help expedite the process of sensitization and myth-busting. Lokotwago says they have seen this method work when the COVID-19 pandemic first hit the country last year.
We're having a meeting today with the community leaders, another type of response to COVID. So today we were discussing mostly on the issue of the vaccine that have now arrived. We are planning to start rolling it out. So we decided to engage them first as leaders in the communities. And in our history, we have engaged them even before when we started the COVID-19 response. So they were very much supportive to all the activities that we had in the communities.
Senior citizen and Ondianeni Chiefdom representative Harry Ngumalo, who was a part of the workshop, thanked the Ministry of Health COVID-19 response team for the workshop.
We are really appreciative of government, and we've got a lot of information today. We have had the opportunity to ask questions as well, and we can only hope and pray that we, the people, who expect to receive this service will actually stand up and be responsive to this great effort. And also, we are a bit apprehensive and worried that a third wave is being spoken about. And we can only hope that the effort that the government is doing, especially the Minister of Health, will go a long way in trying to make sure such a devastating effect of a third wave doesn't affect us terribly.
The COVID-19 situational report of the Shiseleni region indicates that 13 lives were lost due to the coronavirus during the first wave, and 89 lives were lost in the second wave. Lokotwago therefore urged the chiefs to go back and urge the people to observe all COVID-19 compliance measures thoroughly ahead of the anticipated third wave. For Eswatini TV News, I am Sifiso Ngumalo. It's Muva Shongwe in Hlangano.
While 70% of Eswatini's population has access to clean water, there is still need to ensure that every drop of water is properly preserved. These are the words of Acting Director of Water Affairs in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Energy, Magmilens, when sharing his perspective on the importance of World Water Day, which is commemorated on the 22nd of March annually.
On the 22nd of March every year, countries world over commemorate World Water Day. On this day, an awareness is raised on the more than 2.2 billion people on Earth who do not have access to water, while countries also share perspective and insights on critical issues that have to do with water. This year, this day is being commemorated under the theme Valuing Water. Acting Director of the Department of Water Affairs in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Energy, Magmilens, says this theme speaks to how the people of Eswatini ought to perceive and deal with water as a scarce resource.
The water resource is scarce as it may be. We need to ensure that we make use of it, more especially at this point in time where we are having this COVID-19 pandemic. It's very crucial that we make use of the water resource at its best. We are requested to constantly or to frequently wash our hands with running water and together with soap as well. We need to ensure that we conserve the scarce resource.
Khoza says everyone has a role to play in water preservation efforts.
At the moment, we are almost above 70% with access to the water resource. We are continuing, and we have got that initiative to ensure that we attain the vision of the country. Valuing water in the country at large and to the people of Eswatini.
United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 6 calls for all countries to ensure that people have access to clean, potable water by the year 2030. For Eswatini TV News, Hlengiwe Ndlovu with Muzimkhonda in Babane.
Magmilens Eswatini's managing director Bongani Mota says the company has a well-replenished stock of books which will cater for all schools in the country in 2021. Mota said this when reflecting on the company's operations since the outbreak of COVID-19 in the kingdom.
Following the announcements made by the Deputy Prime Minister Themba Masuku last week that schools will open in Eswatini next week, schools and other key players in Eswatini's education industry are already preparing for a smooth learning process following the long unprecedented closure caused by the outbreak of COVID-19. With book publishing company Magmilens Eswatini being one of the key players in the kingdom's education sector, the company's new managing director Bongani Mota has given an assurance that the company will manage to meet every school's book needs.
We were able to distribute the required number of books in 2020, and I must say that we have enough books for 2021 even if it was a normal year.
While other companies have been hard hit by the outbreak of COVID-19, Magmilens Eswatini has managed to keep afloat even in these tough times.
I'd just like to highlight that we look at the mother language as an important part, of our business and an important part of the learning journey for a child. I would just like to announce that we've got, for instance, readers, even for primary level. We've got Siya series, we've got Munya Lulwimi series. We also have Siakula series.
When schools open next week for the 2021 calendar, they are expected to adopt a blended learning and rotational learning approach in order to minimize the spread of COVID-19 in the learning environment. For Eswatini TV News, Hlengiwe Ndlovu with Muzimkhonda in Matapa.
The Eswatini Investment Promotion Authority, APA, will this year host a year-long virtual trade fair, which will be broken down into editions that feature different sectors of Eswatini's economy. This was announced by APA's Manager for Domestic Trade Promotion, Sihle Ngabinze.
With the aim of boosting and uplifting trade and investments in Eswatini, the Eswatini Investment Promotion Authority will be hosting a series of virtual trade fairs which will feature different sectors of the kingdom's economy, with the first sector that will be hosted being the virtual motor show, which begins on Friday, the 26th of March. With each virtual fair, there will be a webinar where different industry players will get to discuss issues affecting their sector while exploring ways of enhancing business. APA's domestic trade manager Sihle Ngabinze says the Eswatini Motor Show will be the first to be hosted in the series of virtual fairs.
In the past, we used to have a physical exhibition of motor show, which we introduced in 2016, and we had a second one on 2017. So basically, our aim as the Eswatini Investment Promotion Authority is to expose those people who are participating in that particular industry, the automotive industry. We're looking at the dealerships, we're looking at the suppliers of parts, we're looking at insurance companies, we're looking at vehicle financiers, just to name a few. So basically what we are doing as APA, we are trying to ensure that the consumer is aware of what products will I find at a certain company who's a dealership, and what products will I find in another company who's maybe in car tracking or car financing.
The Eswatini Motor Show will be preceded by a webinar which will be hosted on byeswatini.com/exhibition. This webinar will also be broadcast live on the Eswatini Investment Promotion Authority Facebook page. For Eswatini TV News, Hlengiwe Ndlovu with Muzi Mkhonda in Manzini.
The Public Sector HIV and AIDS Coordinating Committee, SHAC, has taken a stand to strengthen ways of educating and counseling government employees as well as the nation at large on gender-based violence issues following recent reports on these issues that lead to the loss of lives. According to the director of SHAC, Sandile Mweli, gender-based violence is a serious matter that should be eradicated in the country.
The director of PSHAC, a wellness program that assists government employees, Sandile Mweli, says challenges that they have come across when tackling gender-based violence issues is that there is a wide gap of lack of communication between families or the individuals involved in relationships that eventually lead to one perpetrating violence.
There is so much lack of communication between parties. If you go deep and discuss as they get their counseling or they get their that is noted with regards to communication, where two parties, when they'll get into conflict. Then within that conflict, one will then, or a situation then will come up where there's issue of gender-based violence. Lack of education and information. So many individuals, they lack information on gender-based violence. So many individuals, they lack, with the lack of communication in that space, the financial instability within the families and failure to discuss amongst each other tends to lead to gender-based violence in the same space.
Mweli says they have taken action to eradicate such violence, strengthening education and counseling of Eswatini, as well as working with different psychological coordinators in ministerials to ensure that people are aware of what gender-based violence is and ways of preventing its causes.
And we intend to capacitate our wellness coordinators. We have called it a psychological first aid aspect, where we are saying first-hand counseling when one reports. For a coordinator to function within the ministry, we're going to call coordinators from the ministerial coordinators. We're going to be capacitating coordinators from the unions. We're going to be capacitating coordinators from the uniformed forces on how to deal with gender-based violence, on how to counsel, on how to refer cases of gender-based violence.
Mweli also mentioned that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a limit of group gatherings for counseling sessions. However, they will use their full capabilities to the social media platforms to educate and raise awareness on gender-based violence issues in the country. Reporting for Eswatini TV, Nomalungelo Jele in Babane.
A very good evening once again. You are still watching Eswatini TV. Let's take a look at our sports news. The Eswatini Tennis Association President Maxwell Jele says it is important for the association to have tennis centers around the country, as it is part of their objective to spread the sport to all parts of the kingdom. Jele was speaking during the launch of their satellite tennis center at Sitegi.
The Eswatini Tennis Association, in their objectives, made it known that they want to spread the sport to all the four regions of the country. Even though the activities of the association have been disturbed by the coronavirus outbreak, the association managed to launch a new satellite center in Manzini. Even though the activities of the association have been disturbed by the coronavirus outbreak, the association managed to launch a new satellite center in Stege. President of the association, Maxwell Jele, says this is part of their objectives of taking the sport from the Mbabane-Manzini corridor to the rest of the country.
The decentralization of the sport is very, very critical in the bigger picture in terms of the goals and the objectives of the association. As you will recall, that in the past, unfortunately, the sport sport was more focused within the Manzini-Mbabane corridor. We've taken a very conscious decision as an association to decentralize the sport and just to make sure that, we give the populace as much opportunity as possible. We are all aware that, a lot of children out there in the population, most of them are into football. But we want to make tennis also accessible to the disadvantaged and those that ordinarily would not have the opportunity to play.
The Chief Executive of Sitegi Town Council, Stembile Simelane, says this will help the youth of Sitegi to be able to learn new sports.
Introduction of the tennis program in Sitegi will greatly assist our kids who will be exposed to tennis, a sport which is not so common, and it will also assist in terms of preventing them from getting idly all over the town. Instead, they'll be engaged within the tennis court and play those.
Jele says Coach Njabulo Mpamali will be responsible for the center, and in less than 2 months, they hope they will at least be able to host a tournament in the center. Reporting for Eswatini TV Sports News, I am Patricia Msibi with Linda Dlamini, Babane.
Athletics Association Secretary Toba Mazibugo says since the sport was given a green light by the government to resume their activities, they will improve the sport at regional level where they will educate and recruit young athletes. We have a report.
Athletics is one of the sports who were given a green light by the government to resume their activities since they are considered to be a low-risk sports that can spread the coronavirus. Athletics Association Secretary Toba Mazibugo says they already have programs of trying to improve the sports, which includes going around the 4 regions of the country, educating and recruiting athletes.
Uhlelo lethu lesilibuke kakhulu singa-Athletics Eswatini uhlelo le margin le mayouth ngathi sibuke ukuthi sitawuphusha lona embili kepha ke sive singabheka nje ne track and field ku sensitize usicha sesibuyile ukuthi ibe khona sisabuka kuleti ngonde ka road races nakhona ukuthi singenda njani ukuthi kube khona lesikubuyisako lokutawuba safe water.
Mazibugo says part of their programs to develop the sports at regional level and scout best young talents. Mazibugo added that preparations for local athletes who will represent the nation in this year's Olympics are going smooth in South Africa, where they are based at the moment. The athletes are Sibusiso Matsendwa and Magmilens, but with Ayanda Lusengwa, changes are very slim because he's still trying to recover from an injury.
Athletes ngona la ngathi elite la ngona under the short list Bosibusiso Matsendwa Phumlile nabo Andile cishe beba solo base South Africa la bebatilolonga khona kuleli viki lelitako ke mhla ka 23 kanye namhla ka 30 batawuthola lithuba lokuthi ba compete khona and try and make lama standards for qualification.
Mazibugo concluded by saying he hopes our athletes will represent Eswatini well in the Olympics Games to be played in Japan from July to August this year. Reporting for Eswatini TV Sports, Linda Dlamini and Patricia Msibi, Mbabane.
That's all we had for you this evening. Before we wrap up, here's a relook at tonight's headlines. Expecting 500,000 more doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines. Members of Parliament have moved a motion that the Ministry of Education reverses the decision to compel parents to pay last year's school fees. A heavy storm that swept in some parts of the Northern Ruhr region on Sunday afternoon left a trail of destruction. We sum up our bulletin for the evening. Up next is the weather update from us here at Eswatini TV. Until next time, good night.